Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about 4 Rolex watches that I find collectors to just not be that interested in. These are going to be 4 watches that I think are actually pretty great, but for the reasons that I'm going to share with you, I just see collectors really not adding them to their collections as much as they do some of the other models, such as the Rolex Daytona, the Rolex Submariner, and some of the others. But before we do that, guys, please do not forget to check out DelrayWatch.com, where we buy, sell, trade watches, as well as my Instagram, The Real John P. So the first watch that collectors really don't seem to put in their collection is the Rolex Chiellini Moon Phase 39 millimeters in Rolex Rose Gold. Now, I truly do not understand why more collectors don't at least want this watch, setting aside the price. Now, if you're not familiar with this watch, this is from a line of Rolex that historically hasn't been that popular, right? The Chiellini line is more classic, it's more dress watch. Until the last 5 years, the watches really were more diminutive in size. They were smaller watches. Rolex was really known for the sporting watches. That's what people kind of want to wear from the brand, right? Go figure. But the Chiellini line doesn't hold anything back or doesn't leave anything on the table. It's still a Rolex watch, and some of these watches, in my opinion, are even more finely refined than some of the sporting watches, right? These are dress watches, so that is the idea. Now, particularly with this Chiellini Moon Phase, it is supposed to remind us of the Rolex 8171 as well as the 6062, the vintage Rolex Moon Phase watches, the triple cals. These watches are almost name your price category in terms of pricing, right? So these have become incredibly coveted vintage watches, rare watches that don't pop up for sale very often. But you can have kind of that look with the Moon Phase, the beautiful lacquer dial, the Rose Gold, as well as the meteorite moon in the Moon Phase complication on this watch. Now, I think it just looks so beautiful, but the consideration here is really 2 items that collectors just don't buy this watch. First, the pricing is pretty high for just the watch that you get as well as the complication, right? This watch retails for about $26,000 US, but when you start getting to a price point like this, you start getting into a Lungunzona territory. You start getting into these more limited production, limited batch, high-end independents with more complications usually. And while Rolex does include a Moon Phase complication in this watch, other than that, it really is a Rolex watch. And so some collectors really don't want to bite off on that. For that reason, there might be things that they're more interested at, including tourbillons and repeaters and things like that at that price point. So it kind of gets left out of the purview in that kind of way. As well, this watch comes on a leather strap, and so people generally want that Jubilee or they want that Oyster bracelet, and this, or now the Oyster Flex rubber, and this watch comes on a leather strap, and that's something that really the brand hasn't been known for. So for those reasons, additionally, this is also a very heavy watch, right? It's gold, solid rose gold. So these reasons, although it's a great watch, phenomenal watch, you can see in the video here, collectors just don't seem to buy it. By the way, at the time of the shooting, I think we do have it available at Delray. Now, next we're going to be talking about a Yachtmaster. Now, the Yachtmaster has really 2 main categories, the Yachtmaster 2, one of them being a regatta timer, another one being more of a watch you would wear on the deck of a yacht, right? It kind of has the same functionality as a Rolex Submariner, though historically they had a platinum bezel, a little more shiny, and really more of a jewelry style, high polished watch. Now, the version of this watch that I just don't see out there at all, even though it's probably my favorite version of the watch, is the 37 millimeter size. Yes, there's a 37 millimeter size to kind of replace that mid size that was a 35 with the platinum bezel in that Yachtmaster iteration that they had. I know you know the watch I'm talking about. Even Charlie Sheen wore the 35 millimeter size, but they have a 37 that's available in a couple of variations. And what I like about it is it fits kind of like a vintage Submariner. This fits like a Submariner kind of from 50 years ago. It's got more of that traditional dimension size, and on my wrist, a smaller 6 to 6.5 inch wrist, it just fits a little bit better than these new 41 millimeter sized cases that Rolex has been putting out. And considering when you start talking about mixing in the precious metals, it adds the weight. The smaller size just makes it more wearable, in my opinion. But because of the size, or people maybe just don't even know that it's out there, this watch in this size just really is not on the radar of collectors. Now, interestingly enough, about this watch is there's kind of, I don't want to say a conspiracy, but there's some debate on the movements and why Rolex used the movement on this watch. Now, Rolex uses a 2236 movement, which has really been put into ladies' watches in the past, and there's been some speculation that maybe Rolex is putting it into this size to test it out into sporting models before rolling it out into other models out there, because it uses the Siloxy hairspring instead of the parachrome hairspring. Now, the Siloxy is going to be a metalloid, so it's not metal technically, and it doesn't attract magnetic waves, so it's supposed to be, or at least on paper, it's supposed to be more resistant to magnetic waves than something like a parachrome hairspring. But that is something that's still debated. All the watch collectors online on the forums are talking about this. The Rolex fanatics are going on and on about this for a handful of years now, and really the jury is out on this. But it's interesting to note that maybe this could be the testing grounds for the future of Rolex movements. But regardless, once again, this is just not a watch people trade. I like it. If any of you out there have this watch, I would actually love to hear about it and see it in the comments below, because I've even been tempted just because of how wearable this watch truly is. So let me know, comments below. Now, next we're going to talk about an Explorer, and it's not because I have my Explorer 1016 frogfoot dial on my wrist. You can see more about this on my Instagram, The Real John P. But there was a two-tone Explorer released, Explorer 1, and I received feedback from collectors that this watch just is not an Explorer because of the precious metals that are used, right? Explorer watches are supposed to be stainless steel, basic, simple, beat it up, wear it to the North Pole, jump out of a plane, this kind of a thing. And in the watch collecting community, come on, we're watch collectors, right? We're watching these videos. There's, sometimes precious metals can kind of be looked down on, right? Look at the stainless steel subs selling at, or some stainless steel watches, right? Like the Daytona selling at premiums, sometimes more than, the two-tone counterparts or the precious metal counterparts. Things change, but that's kind of the trend, and people want that stainless, think Nautilus, right? 5711, people want the stainless. And so we get that kind of trend here with the Explorer. Now, this particular Explorer, I actually purchased this for myself, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago. There was an issue with it, so I did, send it back to where I did purchase it from, but I liked it. I thought it was great. I will comment that yes, the precious metal seemed to add some heft to it, and it made it more of a shiny watch and probably less of a watch that someone that is into the outdoors, into true exploring would probably wear. But, even compared to something like an Explorer from 1972, are you going to wear something like this, to go skydiving or jump off a bridge with? I don't know. Are you? But what do you guys think about this watch? I know it's very polarizing, but I don't see very many collectors adding this watch to their collection. Love to see it and hear it. Comments below. Now, last, this to me is a bit of a no-brainer, but I do understand the thought process behind this. I see very few collectors purchasing the Rolex Day-Date 36 in white gold, especially on a bracelet today. Now, this watch does come in a larger size, but the interesting thing about this watch in 40 is that it has a platinum ice blue version with, that platinum configuration, and there's also a green dial out there in the white gold, and people seem to actually really love those watches, including the platinum. The platinum day-dates do sell at a very high premium, but in the 36 size, the actual traditional historical day-date size for the watch, people just don't buy it in white gold that often. Now, common feedback that I receive is that, well, there's really nothing that special about it. The more special dials are in different sizes, or hey, it looks too much like a Datejust, right? It kind of looks like a stainless steel watch, at least from a bit of a distance. And if there's nothing interesting on the dials, right, think kind of the Stella-esque or the color Oyster Perpetual dials to pay over $36,000 for this watch because it's made out of precious metal. I just don't see many collectors doing it. Now, I do see, great deals come up in older versions of the watch. Think versions of the Day-Date 3036 coming up in either yellow gold or even in white gold, though an older model. I do see people pick those up as a great deal out there in the secondhand market. But modern, from a boutique, new, I don't see many collectors buying this watch. I really like the watch. It's kind of that stealth look. People don't know it's gold, so you can maybe feel comfortable wearing it more places. But once again, many collectors think there's a lot of overlap with something like a stainless Datejust or any of the other stainless Rolex models aside from the bracelet style. And it's like, would you pay that premium just to have that extra configuration in the precious metal when really people tend to be, at least collectors, wanting the stainless watches out there from Rolex. But what do you guys think? Do any of you have watches that I've mentioned here? Are any of these watches maybe on your radar, on your hit list? I would love to see it and hear it in the comments below. Guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com as well as my Instagram, TheRealJohnP. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.